My name's James Christie. I'm from Artificial Workflow, and I'd like to demonstrate Echobase, which is our AI platform to support the 4 use cases identified in your tender documents. Echobase is a no-code platform that enables users to quickly set up new AI agents to support different use cases. What I'll do is I'll show you around Echobase so you can familiarize yourself with how the platform works, and then I'll demonstrate the 4 use cases identified in your tender documents. So when you log into Echobase, you're presented with a dashboard, and on that dashboard you've got a series of tiles which are AI agents set up for specific use cases. To create a new agent, you quite simply press New Agent and you give it a name. In this case, I'll call it a test agent, and you submit. The first step is to select some documents that you want to interrogate, your data set that you're going to interrogate. Quite simply, you click on a folder that you've already set up that contains those documents you want to interrogate. You can customize it through selecting different model types, different types of agents that you want to use, and in this case it's a Q&A agent. And you can also customize it around some advanced settings such as a pre-prompt. So this is a prompt that will give your AI agent a certain behavior to follow. So as an example, you are an expert development assessor, and so on. And there it will now behave in that manner that you've identified for it. You can set temperature. So temperature is a creativity setting. So you can set it at 1, which is highly creative, or 0, extremely factual. So in this case, we'll leave it at 0, so be a fact-based agent. And you can set tokens. So maximum tokens or minimum tokens defines the input and output length that you want to use. We leave it usually on 4,000 for a good balanced output. So once you've customized it, you click on Save, and you can begin to chat with your agent like it's a normal Q&A interrogation process. But what I'll do, that was a test agent. Once you've created it, you can also delete them. Once you delete it, it's gone. Okay. So that's the dashboard and how to create new agents. Underneath that is files. So as I mentioned, an important point is that you can curate your own data sets based on a topic or a use case that you want to work with. So as an example, for your pathways and requirement finder, you would create a folder around all of the legislation and requirements for submitting development applications. So quite simply, you click on create a new folder, you give it a name, call this test agent again, you submit it, then you identify where those documents are, you click on the document, you upload it. It takes a moment to upload. Then the next step is you train your AI agent with the documents that you've uploaded. And so this goes through a process of ingesting the documents and converting them into a vector file format, which enables it to speak with large language models. So it takes a moment. You can see that the status there is it's still pending, and it will change to done to show you that the document has been ingested and is ready to interrogate. So that only takes a moment. There we go, it's done. And now you can start to connect an AI agent to this data set and start working with it. Similar to before, once you've finished with a data set, you can simply delete it, and all those documents are now gone. There is a help center. If you click on here, it opens up a new web page which has got a series of tips on how to use Echobase, and then there's settings. And on settings, the most important point here is organization. The idea is that you can invite other people in to your dashboard to enable you to work and collaborate as a team on certain use cases. So it might be that there are 5 people within the council who are responsible for assessing development applications, and you would give them access, and you could all work in parallel around doing a certain activity. So going back to the dashboard, I'll now demonstrate how Echobase can be used on the 4 use cases. So the first thing to understand is with those 4 use cases, we've been able to categorize them into 2 types. Type number 1 is what we call a basic Q&A, so that's question and answer. So the use case, the Pathways and Requirement Finder, falls into that category. And the idea is that it is simply a case of when that information's there, that the external stakeholder can query the agent and ask it questions and get immediate responses with the right information to support their pathway that they need to take in terms of submitting a development application. The one difference here is that this is a dashboard for internal stakeholders, so council workers as an example, but in order to make this available to external stakeholders, we would have to go through the process of embedding one of these agents into the council's websites. So there's some additional integration work that's required there. So that's the first use case around basic Q&A. The second category is what we call checking against a standard. So use cases 2, 3, and 4 all fit into that category. And the idea is that you have a standard document or standards captured somewhere that you want to check another document against to see how well it fits that standard, identifying potential gaps. And the idea is that you would then load a defined standard, you would then load the document you want to compare against that standard, and you would ask the agent to find the gaps. So the other 2 broad categories, and similarly the material self-assessment health check, you would need to embed an agent into the website to enable external stakeholders access to that information. So let me demonstrate those 2 cases. So with the basic Q&A, I've set up an agent here called Q&A, and the documents that we've got within this agent are, the example here is the Wagga Wagga City Council's got some operational plans. And so they're quite lengthy. There's 68 pages. There are other files in here as well, so their strategic plan also is within this agent. And you can quite simply ask questions of now those documents that are contained within that data set. So in this case, I'll ask, what are Wagga Wagga City Council's strategic priorities over the period 2023 to 2024? And it will go through those 3 documents and it will interrogate them, and it will identify what those strategic priorities are. So it's that simple Q&A process that you can go through that a developer may have in terms of trying to define their pathway. So you can ask follow-up questions as well. So as an example, what are the key performance indicators for Wagga Wagga's strategic plan? And again, it will go through and it will find the relevant information and it will relay that back as a response. Okay, so, and you can also ask it to rewrite these in dot point format, if that would be more of a easily readable format. Now, we could also set that up as a pre-prompt to make sure that it outputs in dot point format. It all depends on how you'd like to set these agents up to behave. Okay, so that's the Q&A style agent that we would use for use case 1. So the second category, as I mentioned, was checking against a standard. And what we've got here is a best practice guide. It's probably the closest parallel to use cases 2, 3, and 4. Now, the example I've got is we've got a best practice guidelines for business continuity plans. And there's 108 pages explaining what a good business continuity plan looks like. And essentially what you do is then compare business continuity plans against these best practice to see if there's any gaps. And in this case, we've got an example of a COVID-19 continuity plan, business continuity plan, which outlines things such as insurance, what we do in office closures as an example. So I'll show you how we can interrogate that document to understand if there's any gaps in terms of the best standards. So I'll use a prompt, which is, here we go, how well does the business continuity plan meet the 20 criteria in the best practice guidelines? So what's the agent's doing is it's understanding what those 20 criteria are, and then it's looking for evidence in that COVID-19 business continuity plan to see how well it meets that standard. And so it's listing out a qualitative response of how well it's meeting those standards. You can also ask it to potentially output in a table format and provide a rating of 0 to 10, where 0 is low and 10 is high, to demonstrate, well, how big is the gap. So it will go through now and it will identify that gap and the size of that gap. So you can hone in on where you need to work and to improve the submission that you've made. So that is, as I said, your checking against a standard, which could be used for the material self-assessment, for the risk-based triage, and the material assurance. Clearly, we would have to customize these with you. We would have to test the prompts to get them right and make sure that the team's trained up to follow those prompts and to use it in the appropriate manner. But nonetheless, this was a quick walkthrough of Echobase, our no-code platform that enables users to quickly set up AI agents to support different use cases. Thank you, and I look forward to hearing your feedback.